Thank you for joining us. If you're just joining us, this is Report Desk Africa. But again, this is an extraordinary edition of Report Desk Africa, which is brought about because of the extraordinary, Ecowas summit that has just concluded, or that was just concluded in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria, chaired by Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who of course is the chairman, the current chairman of the Economic Community of West African States, talking about ECOWAS. Now, they have talked about several resolutions. If you've been following the summit, the communique was read at the end of the summit, and there were different resolutions that were brought forward. I'll quickly go through some of what we have here from that particular communique that was read. Of course, first of all, like Blessings here did say, this extraordinary summit is sequel to the one that was held on the 30th of July for the same reason, the coup that took place in Niger Republic. Now, in attendance were certain heads of governments, heads of states. I can remember that mentioned were the presidents of Ghana, Benin Republic, Guinea-Bissau, of course, Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who also chaired the summit. And then we also had the president of Senegal, Sierra Leone, Togo, and certain other West African countries. But notably were certain leaders who were not from the West African sub-region. Of course, like they say, Africa is one big country, what affects the West, affects the East and other regions. We also had the presidents of Burundi and Mauritius in attendance. Now, quickly, some of the things discussed, as I mentioned earlier, were talked about, taking note of what happened during the past weeks. Now, if you have been following as well, you remember that Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the chairman of ECOWAS currently, did, some called it a threat, some said it was a warning. He gave 1 week's ultimatum for the military junta who has taken charge to step down and to release, first of all, President Bazoum, and then to restore democratic rule. That 1 week elapsed and nothing happened. The Blessings, it has been an interesting turn of events in the past 1 month, so to speak, in Niger Republic. And of course, what affects Niger affects her closest neighbor, Nigeria. Yeah. And that exactly has been springing up a lot of tension, especially when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu called for, or should I say, threatened with military force from ECOWAS. But not every country, so many countries in ECOWAS, and of course people in Nigeria kicked against that particular threat. What do you think?
Well, I think interestingly, I mean, this started as every other coup that that has come up in Africa, but eventually it took a different turn. First of all, I would say that external bodies, international bodies, have condemned the house arrest, so I'll call it, of Mohamed Bazoum, who is the president of Niger Republic. And the way it unfolded, or rather, was quite very interesting. And now the military rulers are now asking for the intervention of the Wagner group. They have blocked all their air borders and all that. So that's to say that they are quite defiant to what the international bodies are saying. Now, like I said earlier, this extraordinary summit is sequel to the one that was held on the 30th of July. And the reason they're having to hold this again is because that was met with defiance. Well, we will continue this conversation, of course. We have a bureau chief in the Federal Capital Territory, Amadin, who will help us understand this better. Amadin, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Amadin, what is your take on what's going on right now in Niger Republic? I mean, we know how the entire situation has unfolded, and of course, that's the reason why the ECOWAS Extraordinary Summit was held again, after the one that was held on the 30th of July. So what exactly is the mood like?
Now, first of all, the president of the ECOWAS Commission, Umar Akede, made it clear that every piece and effort made by the ECOWAS Commission, heads of state and authority and of governments, that every move has been fully reported by the community that ECOWAS of that community. He said clearly that the ECOWAS chief of staff have been ordered to
Amadin, I must apologize, Amadin. It seems that we're having issues with the network connection. We will try to rectify that and come back to you once we have clear communication with you. We do apologize for the breaking transmission, Amadin. Now, Blessings, we're talking earlier about resolutions that were met. Now, the first thing that I want to bring out here, of course, is the fact that, first of all, ECOWAS has condemned, first of all, the detention of President Bazoum and his household and his family members. They also have called, called the leaders and the members of the CNSP and are holding them responsible for this, holding them responsible for what exactly has happened. Now, all options are on the table for peace negotiations. Now, the basic challenge now that is going to be discussed is the fact that we've seen the same thing happen in the likes of Mali during the coup. We saw the same thing happen in Burkina Faso, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And none of these resolutions brought anything, as many have explained. There have been threats in those countries. The junta is still there. There have been resolutions, peaceful negotiations. The junta is still there. And of course, this may determine what will happen again in Niger. Of course, if you see that your neighbors have been threatened and they didn't yield to threat, it just means that the people threatening them are toothless dogs. So is this the time for us to, I beg your pardon, is it time for ECOWAS to actually stand up and rise to the occasion? Or is it going to be business as usual like what we saw in the other two countries?
I would like to say that this is obviously a step to the right direction, right? To get better clarity, I would like for us to take a look at the playback of the resolutions that were being discussed at the extraordinary summit. Do take a look.
The Authority of Heads of State and Government of the Economic Community of West African States convened in an extraordinary session in Abuja, Nigeria on 10th August 2023 under the chairmanship of His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and Chair of the Ecowas Authority. The extraordinary summit was convened as a sequel to the recent one held on 30 July 2023, following the illegal detention of President Mohamed Bazoum by the members of the Presidential Guard in the Republic of Niger on 26 July 2023. Present at the summit were the following heads of state and duly mandated representatives: His Excellency Patrice Talon, President of the Republic of Benin; His Excellency Alassane Ouattara, President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire; His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana; His Excellency Umaru Sissoko Mbalo, President of the Republic of Guinea-Bissau; His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, President of the Republic of Nigeria; His Excellency Macky Sall, President of the Republic of Senegal; His Excellency Julius Maada Bio, President of the Republic of Sierra Leone; His Excellency Faure Gnassingbé, President of the Togolese Republic; His Excellency Mamadou Tangara, Minister of Foreign Affairs, representing His Excellency the President of the Gambia; His Excellency Ambassador D. Maxwell Sarr Kemaya, Minister of Foreign Affairs, representing His Excellency the Head of State, the President of Liberia; His Excellency Belarmino Silva, Ambassador of Cape Verde, representing His Excellency the President of Cabo Verde. The summit was also attended by Evariste Gnassingbé, President of the Republic of Burundi; His Excellency Mohamed Ould Ghazouani, President of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania; Omar Aliou Touré, President of the Commission; His Excellency Leonardo Santos Simao, Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General for West Africa and the Sahel and Head of UNOWAS; His Excellency Ambassador Bankole Adeoye, Commissioner for Peace and Security, representing the chairperson of the African Union Commission. The authority, having considered the memorandum presented by the President of the ECOWAS Commission on the current situation in the Republic of Niger, as well as ECOWAS engagement since the last extraordinary summit, and having considered the reports of the envoys of the chair to Niger and various other places, carefully considered the report and recommendations of the Ecowas Committee of Chiefs of Defense Staff, extensively discussed the latest development in Niger since the last extraordinary summit held on 30 July 2023, noted that all diplomatic efforts made by ECOWAS in resolving the crisis have been defiantly repelled by the military leadership of the Republic of Niger, taking note of the expiration of the one-week ultimatum given for the restoration of constitutional order in the Republic of Niger, decide as follows. A, reiterates its strong condemnation of the attempted coup d'etat and the continued illegal detention of President Mohamed Bazoum, his family, and members of his government. B, further condemns the condition in which President Bazoum is being detained and hold the CNSP fully and solely responsible for the safety, security, and physical integrity of President Bazoum, members of his family, and government. C, uphold all measures and principles agreed upon by the extraordinary summit held on Niger on 30th July 2023. Underscore the determination of the ECOWAS authority to keep all options on the table for the peaceful resolution of the crisis. Enforce all measures, in particular border closures and strict travel bans and assets freeze, on all persons or groups of individuals whose actions hinder all peaceful efforts aimed at ensuring the smooth and complete restoration of constitutional order. Warn member states who, by their action directly or indirectly, hinder the peaceful resolution of the crisis in Niger, about the consequences for their action before the community. Call on the African Union to endorse all the decisions taken by the ECOWAS authority on the situation in Niger. Further call on all partner countries and institutions, including the United Nations, to support ECOWAS in its effort to ensure a quick restoration of constitutional order in conformity with its normative instruments. Direct the President of the Commission to monitor the implementation of the sanctions. Direct the Committee of the Chief of Defense Staff to activate the ECOWAS standby force with all its elements immediately. Order the deployment of the ECOWAS standby force to restore constitutional order in the Republic of Niger. Underscore its continued commitment to the restoration of constitutional order through peaceful means. Express appreciation to His Excellency General Abdulsalami Abubakar, His Eminence Muhammadu Saad Abubakar, the Sultan of Sokoto, Ambassador Baba Kingibe, for the special envoy missions undertaken in Niger, Libya, and Algeria on behalf of the Chair of Authority. Express gratitude to His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and Chair of the ECOWAS Authority, for convening the extraordinary summit and for the manner in which he has been conducting the affair of the community as Chair of Authority. Done at Abuja this 10th day of August 2023. I thank you.
Now, that was Omar Toure, the president of the ECOWAS Commission, reading out some of the resolutions that were discussed at the ECOWAS Extraordinary Summit between the heads of state and government. Now, speculations are that if this coup is successful, which is looking like because of the adamant and all, Niger Republic will be the last domino to fall in a long list of connected African countries that are connected in a region all the way to the Red Sea, and that is not good for the African continent. Now, the heads of state and government have come up with some of the resolutions, like you heard. like condemning, the detention of Niger Republic president and some other things. And one of the sanctions is that the Central Bank of Nigeria has been ordered to stop financial transactions to countries that are also in support of the military coup. So these are some of the resolutions that have been discussed at the summit of the heads of state and government. Ahmed?
Definitely some of the resolutions that were discussed. The financial sanction that, like you mentioned, not just to Niger Republic, but also to countries that have directly or indirectly been supporting the coup activities. Now, what also struck me is also that they have also, ECOWAS is now pushing forward and talking tough, like they did on the 30th of July, where now they're asking for the deployment of military forces should it be necessary. We're talking about ECOMOG. That's the military arm of ECOWAS. Initially, the president of Nigeria did call for military intervention in 7 days if those in charge of the coup did not stand down and reinstate President Bazoum. 7 days have elapsed, like, as I mentioned earlier, and we have not seen any military forces, largely because other ECOWAS countries, ECOWAS member countries, have said that they do not want any violence. So now they're going more into dialogue and peaceful resolution. Definitely, it's going to take its toll on the neighboring countries around West Africa, looking at how well connected the African countries are, particularly the Francophone countries. Now, I want you to take into consideration, of course, is also the fact that most, if not all, the countries who have also experienced coups from 2021 up until now are Francophone African countries, which clearly has been bringing a certain, let's say, a sign of warning to even the Anglophone countries. But as we go forward, I'd like to call on our head of research at News Central, who is joining us now via Zoom, Abdulateef Ahmed. Abdulateef, it's good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
Abdulateef, we're going to jump straight into it. Last week, we were talking partially about this. Little did we know that this summit was going to hold. Now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has chaired this particular summit, and we've heard the communique and the result of what has been going forward. What do you make of some of the points that were raised? Economic sanctions, military sanctions, closing of borders, and basically some of the sanctions that ECOWAS has come up with or come out with after this extraordinary summit.
ECOWAS has demonstrated leadership this time, having exercised all diplomatic sources, diplomatic outlook to ensure that issues are resolved without having to deploy force. You would have realized that the first 3 missions were rebuffed. Even the United States mission, the envoy was there, and then the junta did not listen to her. We had some days ago, former Emir of Kano was with the junta. He was able to speak directly with the junta, and we are hoping that some of the deliberations were communicated to the president and the diplomatic mission. However, because of the steps that the military junta is taking, for instance, it has new ministers now. It is moving on to strengthen its hold on the country. The resolutions that the extraordinary summit has made are in tandem with the rules of engagement of ECOWAS. A lot of people have worried, for instance, that trying to force out a military government may be too costly for ECOWAS. But it is even worse if you allow the contagion to get to Niger and then spread to other African countries. I mean, what is the assurance that what happened in Niger will not happen in Cameroon? Cameroon has been a funny democracy that has one leader for decades. All the signs are there. What's the chance that it will not come to Nigeria, where, yes, we have a democracy, but a lot of people are disenchanted with the kind of governance running, where you have people in deep leadership misruling, the country, where you have theft of unimaginable level. And, sometimes because this theft and economic sabotage is connected to those in the military or in the forces, in quotes, nobody gets penalized. What it means is that at some point, those in the military can decide to extend their greed, or those who have continued to violate Nigeria without being penalized, either those who have been involved in the the attacks in parts of Plateau and Benue State, either those have been involved in the crisis in Northwest, the banditry activities where nobody has been penalized, or those that have been involved directly in the theft of oil in the Niger Delta region. If those forces who have been involved in all of this and have the connivance or backings or linkages to some men, in the military, what it means is that they could extend their greed and somehow they could take up Nigeria. So you must act decisively against those who are, trying to force military action on, their various countries. Otherwise, the chances are there that it will spread, regardless of, the promise of democracy, as the case may be at the moment.
All right, Abdulateef, let's talk about the approach that Ecowas is adopting. We see that they're trying to resort to peaceful resolution of the conflict. And the question now remains that what if, after all these sanctions are being imposed, the military rulers still refuse to step down? I mean, last we heard they're asking the French Wagner group to intervene while blocking the air borders and all that. So what if, with all of these sanctions imposed, the military rulers refuse to step down? What then can be done?
So there are options for ECOWAS to explore because economic sanctions are not enough. One of the difficult things about economic sanctions is that sometimes even the citizens of that country begin to see ECOWAS as the enemy. But ECOWAS is not the enemy. Those who will feel the pinch for every sanction that is imposed on Niger Republic, even Ghanaians are feeling the pinch. Nigerians are feeling the pinch. Togolese and other countries around Niger are feeling the pinch. So it is up to ECOWAS, really. There is nothing better than diplomatic approach to resolving these issues. But I'm excited that the military is being activated as standby in case they need to deploy, the army. Because when all diplomatic approaches fail, there is really nothing wrong in using the military. Yes, it will cost us a lot. Yes, it will cost the continent, the sub-region a lot, but that is the one option that can assure us that we're not going to be overrun by miscreants or, overtaken by despots who will claim that because of the insecurity in various countries, they're usurping power. Because the moment the military takes on power, one, they are not designed to govern. They are designed to protect the populace. It therefore means that everything they will be doing will be working in the dark, groping in the dark. And when you are cut off from those who will give you aid, when you are cut off from your immediate neighbors, you cannot run transactions and trade and international trade properly. Your diplomatic outreaches have been broken. Everything is stagnated for that country. So if we do not want, the little freedom we have even in Nigeria, Ghana, Liberia, as the case may be, if we do not want all of this freedom to evaporate, then we must do everything to defend the democracy that we have now. And that is why that option of saying, ECOWAS has intervened in the past more than on 7 different occasions where it had to intervene to ensure that, democratic governance is restored, in those countries. So it is up to ECOWAS. So I'm sure ECOWAS will be studying the situation and trying to see how much the junta is willing to adjust. If it decides, for instance, to start a process for an interim government or for a democratic election to hold soon, that may be another option. It can decide to release Bazoum as a precondition for acceptance. It can also say that an election will hold with Bazoum not on the ballot or be on the ballot. It just depends on the options that are open, to them and to ECOWAS. I believe that there will be a meeting point in all of this.
Abdulateef, I quickly want to bring you back. You largely were talking about the military coming in, the military arm of ECOWAS. Now there are those there's a school of thought that believes that ECOWAS may have just lost its bite. And if ECOWAS has lost its bite, then it means that the military arm of ECOWAS has also lost the same. Now, we've seen coups happen. Blessings and I were discussing that just before you came on air in Francophone countries across Africa, across the sub-region, just like we're seeing now, the likes of Mali, the likes of Burkina Faso. In these 2 countries, and maybe even more, ECOWAS did almost the same thing, roll out sanctions, or rather roll out sanctions blow hot at some point. But, you know, months led into years, and we're still having military juntas ruling those particular countries. So what makes it different this time in Niger? Now, of course, there are, again, a school of thought that believes that the leadership of ECOWAS now is different from what they had before. Talking about President of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Do you think that he has what it takes to bring, or will I say, to breathe a breath of fresh air into ECOWAS, such that ECOWAS can do something different in Niger than what was done in the other Francophone countries that have witnessed coups?
I believe he intends to do slightly different from what his predecessors had done. And one of those were immediately evident when he was elected by the ECOWAS states. He became the chairman of ECOWAS states, and he sounded clear warnings that he wasn't, you know, going to tolerate military interventions in some of these in the ECOWAS states. But beyond words, he's essentially putting his words to action. And we cannot know better than the military top brass across West Africa. They know the terrain, they understand the threat, they understand the opportunity, they understand what it entails to go into war or to go into getting a military government out of power. They have evaluated all of this. And if we trust them enough to say these are our defense chiefs, and our defense chiefs have not ruled out the option of military intervention to take out the junta in Niger, then it should be something we look forward to. I mean, nobody wants war. Nobody wants, even the coup itself was a bloodless one, for which some will say, let's commend these guys. But the truth of the matter is the usurpation of power from the civilians will concentrate power in the hands of few people who were originally not designed to be in power. What it means is that there will be chances of heightened suppression of individual freedoms. There will be gagging of alternative views. There will be a lot of frustrations in the land, because when you suspend the constitution and suspend the judiciary, the military becomes everything, and anybody that is contrarian can be accused, can be eliminated, and nothing will happen to those in power. So it is up to, you know, this current administration to say, okay, yes, we have been quiet, yes, we've not done enough, but now we want to activate some of these things. Almost all the countries are not looking forward to military action. The Ghanaians do not want military action. Sierra Leoneans do not want military action. Liberians do not want military action. But if ECOWAS heads of government, if the military, the defense chiefs across ECOWAS states are saying that this is an option that is open to them, then we do not know better than them. They will have to use that option. Again, if we decide that we do not want to intervene militarily in Niger, let's be ready for a lot of consequences. For example, the belt that is affected by military takeover is also about the same belt that is dogged by the current insecurity stretch across the region. That is the cross-border crimes happening. The stretch where you have a lot of criminal activities, the movement of arms, proliferation of arms, movement of drugs, and all of that across the same sub-region. So
okay,
you have military on one
Abdulateef,
side.
apologies.
Yes,
Please hold that thought. We're nowhere near done. Thank you so much for helping us understand this better so far. But one major question to be asked is what impact will these have on the people of Niger Republic? With all of these sanctions being imposed, it will definitely have an impact on the people of Niger Republic. But in the meantime, we'll go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue this discourse. Please stay with us.
Thank you for joining us. If you're just joining us for the beginning of the show, well, you have missed quite a lot. We started with the closing part of the the ECOWAS Extraordinary Summit, which was held in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, concerning the coup that has taken place in Niger Republic, and concerning the ongoings, or the goings-on, if you like, in Niger Republic. Now, this Extraordinary Summit, there have been several points read out in the communique explaining what the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, will be doing in the next few weeks. And that has been our topic for conversation. Of course, I'm not alone. I have not been alone. Blessings Mosugu has been here with me, and we've been talking to Abdulateef Ahmed, who is the head of research on News Central Television, and of course to Abuja Bureau Chief Amadin, who will be joining us again. Blessings, just before we go back to our guests, very interesting here that has been happening. Now, there's certain things that I'm going to bring forth to the guests. I don't expect you to answer it now, but I just want to let the cat out of the bag before I ask them. Now, Abdulateef did mention that there's been, some kind of, will I say, similarities in these coups that have taken place in these African countries within West Africa. Yeah. First of all, it's happened in Francophone countries, and then it's followed a pattern, like a domino effect, towards the Red Sea. Now, there's fears that it may spread to Cameroon because Cameroon has certain qualities that these countries have experienced, and I penned some of them. First of all, insecurity is one of them. There's also inflation, there's a weak economy, and of course, there's corruption. Now, almost all these countries have these, will I say, similarities. And well, it sounds familiar because Nigeria also has some of these similarities.
I know, right? And I think that one other thing that he did mention, as Abdulateef did mention, is that it is impossible to see other African countries having successful, in quotes, this coups successful and not think of the fact that it won't have any repercussions. So it's possible that they would want to embark on one themselves. Now, to go further in this conversation, we have our bureau chief still standing by, Amadin, who will be helping us. Amadin, thank you so much for staying with us.
Blessing. Thank you, Bernard.
It's a pleasure. Now, Amadin, before we went to the break, I was talking about the impact that all of these will have on Nigerians. Now, it's impossible to overlook the fact that they might possibly be thrown into hunger, starvation. I mean, look at what happened in Sudan. A lot of people, innocent people, like we always see on Report Desk Africa, and, I mean, it's an African adage that when two elephants fight, the grass will suffer it. So Nigerians are very susceptible at this point because with all of these sanctions, they will most likely be thrown into hunger, starvation. A lot of people would be displaced, and hopefully not, but there is every tendency that lives would also be lost. So what are the impacts you see that this will have on the people of Niger Republic?
Okay, now, Blessing, first of all, you have to recall what is happening in Sudan, where you have two war chiefs that have turned the country upside down. Just yesterday, information on social media, this thing came up with that there was a certain rebel chief who had come up in Niger, calling on the West, calling on France, calling on all who want to support him to restore democratic order. So you see, Niger is gradually sliding into the same Sudan situation. If a full-blown civil war will go in that state, because Western nations, France, have interest in Niger. America has current military government in Niger cutting Russia and cutting the allies of Russia. You have heard that he has called Wagner, the military Russia, to come and support him for both some commanders and
okay, Amadin, we really apologize. We're still having these connectivity issues. We do hope that it gets better. We'll come back to you. I was, I would like to say I was enjoying the point he was trying to make there. But we're going to cross over to our head of research at News Central, talking about Abdulateef Ahmed, who will be also joining us. But just before then, yes.
I think that one thing Amadin was saying, just like a lot of others have reiterated, is the fact that Nigerians at this point do not have a say in this matter, and it is following, just like you said earlier, it's following a trend, it's following a pattern, and the latest of which is the Sudan crisis. Look at how that quickly escalated, and it is not enough to say that just two strong powerhouses are fighting. Now it is the effect we're seeing, and now we're seeing a third one. So the major concern now is how this is going to affect people in Niger. It's unfortunate that we didn't have a strong enough network, and hopefully we can have Amadin back. But the point I'm just trying to make is the fact that a lot of people in Niger right now are now in panic mode.
Yes, they are in panic mode. Now, the surprise thing is I was reading an article that was saying that the people are in panic mode, first of all, but they also are disillusioned. Now, first of all, they are receiving support from the Wagner Group. And so they probably believe that whatever sanctions may be meted upon them by ECOWAS and the Western world, they will receive support from the Wagner Group. It's like saying you jettison the relationship you have with your neighbors and expect somebody from a different township to come to your rescue. Exactly. And they've been celebrating that. We saw how they brought down the French embassy in Niger Republic. We saw how they burnt French flags. We saw how they condemned the West. And then some were even carrying the Russian flags and chanting songs in support of Russia. Now, of course, there are many sides to this story. There are those who believe that it may seem more rosy right now, but in the end, Russia may still have its own interest, of course, and that's why they are showing support. And I think many African countries that are aligning with Russia, whether or not it's to their benefit, should be quite careful, because countries that have, would I say, fallen into coup are always, as history has shown us, are always very, very, what's the word now? Very vulnerable to anything and anyone that's coming. They are willing to receive support. It's almost like saying, as long as you are not in support of us, or rather, you're not